Have you ever just sat and stared at a guitar, looked at the fretboard with the intention of being like, I'm going to learn? I want to be able to understand this instrument. I remember the first time I legitimately picked up the guitar. And it wasn't the acoustic, it's the one I bought off of Amazon. It was the cheap, like $60 one. I didn't have any knowledge of, expensive or cheap guitars, but I just wanted to learn, you know? I knew that it was going to be rudimentary for the guitar it was. It was black, it had, some just a basic look to it. Um, so when I picked that up, I remember sitting there and just thinking, man, there's so much that can be learned from this. And a couple nights after that, or it was maybe a couple months, I remember having one of my first of many epiphanies, and I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, I am going to be able to start playing any song. I'm going to be able to, there's all this information that I can learn and I can pick up and a vast ocean of knowledge. And I started looking at the fretboard. So you start off with the notes E, A, D, G, B, and E. And you're just like, okay, what does that mean? Well, the thing with that is that's the like open position, right? And that is above the first fret. So, then you have F and then B flat, D sharp, G sharp, C, and F, right? And at first it was really confusing. My cat Simon is looking at me like, what are you doing? At first it was really confusing, right? But I started looking at the different shapes of the chords. C major, D major, E major, F major, G, A, and B. And I kind of went, okay, these are pretty basic. I tried to come up with like a key code form. I had this whole like plan devised in this whole thing. I was talking to somebody at the beginning and they were saying, circle of fifths, there's, progressions. There was a lot of things coming at me all at once. And I thought, well, I can learn it on YouTube. There's the guy Marty and there's, these different people out there that teach us stuff, right? Well, I would start the videos and they would go, oh, well, there's more in the link in the description. And if you sign on to the Patreon and this and this. And I said, like, I just wanted to learn. I didn't want to subscribe. I didn't want to do anything. And I was just kind of stuck for a second. Then I would go to uh, guitar lyric sites. For most of my life, I have looked up song lyrics, and I spent so many years buying music and memorizing and like basically soaking into my brain all of these different songs. That it was pretty simple to just be like, all right, these are a list of songs that I enjoy that give me meaning, that give a excitement to me. And that's where I kind of started going, okay, I could put these together. I had something to put it towards, right? Then I got onto the sharps and flats. So say you have B major and then B flat major, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and then F sharp, and so on. And then from there, I started going, well, I want to be able to play some blues music, and I want to be able to play country and, the songs that have this seventh. And I learned later they were called dominant seventh. And, I started off with B7, D7, and some like at first E7 and like F7, C7, those looked confusing to me. They were too far beyond what my hands could handle. And, but eventually I started being able to pick up on them. I would listen to the sound of how they were played, and I would go, okay, my phone has been kind of a godsend for me, right? Um, and then there came the point where I got an electric guitar, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna learn how to play, the, rock music. I'm gonna be able to play, pop music and stuff. And I was pretty much back to the beginning again. So I kind of was like, well, obviously, rock music has its own mood to it. It has its own vibe and stuff, right? You've got fifth chords, which are also called power chords, and those are typically just two note shapes. And the first one I started off with was E5, and I was just like, cool, okay, I can go from here. And I would just kind of go E5, to F sharp and then to G. And I would just kind of, that was how I learned in the beginning. And I thought, yeah, this is rock. This is, this is where it's at. And again, I just kind of was stumped. And somebody at that point had, when I had brought up, my interest in the guitar and in music in general, they said, oh, well, you're not going to be able to learn, you're going to hit a wall eventually. You're not going to learn everything. It's, there's only so much. And I kind of did panic. I was worried for that short period of time. And then I just I kept pushing forward, So I had got a bunch of guitar apps, and I started looking at screenshots of lyrics. There were like the bridges from songs, the part of a song that sort of evokes emotion, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, this is, these are some of the chord progressions. And I started writing them down. I made list after list after list after list. And like slowly it started becoming apparent that, hey, these songs have the same progressions. These songs are in the basic, they're in the same category. And eventually I came to a point where I put together all of those, those screenshots, and I went through, the songs I'd saved on the guitar app, and I realized that there was C major, G major, A minor, and F, or we're going to simplify this up: C, G, A, M, and F, F, G, A, M, and C, G, D, E, M, and C. And that kind of became a mantra for me. It kind of became something I would just, repeat. And when I would go to work, I'd clock in. I would usually have like a little slip of paper with me. And, if I wasn't at the register taking orders, and if I was, running orders outside, I would just go on autopilot for the most part, and I would just repeat C, G, A, M, F, F, G, A, M, C, G, D, E, M, C, D, M, B flat, F, C, G, E, M, C, and D, C, E, M, A, M, F, F, G, E, M, D. Some of these D, A, B, M, G, B, A, G, and E, E, C, A, and B. Like, all of these became like just revolving in my brain so that I could get to a point where I'd be able to like pick up my acoustic guitar, or, when it came time to do it with my electric guitar, where I could just, where I knew that eventually I would be able to go, straight out to where I could play these songs. And then I started putting in, the major seventh chords. So, you have F major. That was the first one I learned, was F major. Now, C major, that to me, when I would look at stuff, that's just like two notes, right? But that's not really what it is. Then you had the minor seventh, DM7, AM7, EM7. AM7 and EM7 like started making more sense a little bit ago. And then when it came to that point, I said, okay, what are the notes in these chords? What are the like, what is behind the chords, because I wanted to start learning the piano. So, say you have C major. Okay, so what is C major? C major, E major, and G, right? And that's C, E, and G in my mind. And then I went, okay, well, what are the other ones? F major is F, A, and C. D is D, F sharp, and A. You take E is E, G sharp, and B. But then, you start working in with the inversions and, triads, arpeggios, scales were then the next thing that I started tackling. And I started looking at guitar tabs and I'm like, yeah, okay. But then, I was, and it just kind of went back to the beginning where I was like, okay, where do I start? How do I learn scales? And I would look at the the C again of major, minor, Aeolian, Phagrian, which I still can't pronounce right. You'd have Dorian, Ionian, and these all were just like, what am I looking at? And then it was over a period of a couple months. It kind of clicked, and I kind of made another little pattern for myself. And it was L7, 76, 71, 69, hat P, LYI, IH. And then, it was just the way it kind of looked when you look at the scales on the guitar, right? On the fretboard. That was how I kind of put it in my head to be able to remember it. And okay, I would just repeat again: L7, 76, 71, 69, hat P, LYI, IH, and then it just repeats and repeats. And I was like, okay, how do I apply that to the guitar? And how does it work with it? And then you start seeing that, wait a minute, so if you take C, right, C major on the 5th fret, okay, you have L7, 76, and, you've got, so you just take the E string and the B string right at the top, and then you have the L7 and 76, and that would be in that bracket, basically, is what I called it. And it started clicking. I bought a couple books to begin with, and I had a couple apps, and I started with these progressions, these little licks, as they call them. So, to kind of get myself into the rhythm of playing these songs, these little things. And it's not easy. It isn't. Finger picking with the guitar, doing the Travis picking, any of that, those are still things that there's, again, an ocean of information to be learned. But, it's, picking in general is starting to make sense to me. Again, I can remember when I started this whole journey and I was like panicked about, I don't even know if I'm holding the pick right. I don't know if I'm, strumming it right. And it all starts making sense eventually, Then we were at a point where I came up with a pattern of this. Okay, so it would go: don't learn, show faith, confess, keep holding, forever stand the messenger. And those were the songs: don't stop believing, learn my lesson, show me what I'm looking for, faithfully, confession, keep holding on, stand by me, forever by Kiss, the messenger. And then, there's other ones that I work on, and that, then I was like, okay, I took those, and those are just kind of, if someone is like, oh, just play a couple songs, and they could really care less, then just getting those basic, songs down was important to me. Yeah, so that's basically, like, just, the beginning of the knowledge that I've learned